Okay, today we're going to look at an update I made to our research wiki. So if you don't have access to this is a closed beta tool that is basically seeking to replace your practical law, your LexisNexis for the legal practitioner, and with the use of AI to generate the initial pages. And one of the important pieces here is that we need to make sure that everything we get in this wiki is verifiable. We need to be able to click through and see the source of the information. We need to make sure that we're not getting bad information that then leads to bad advice. So this isn't a tool that we rely on heavily yet in terms of reliance on the research. So there are still some issues with it. However, we have made a big step forward, and I'm excited to test this out with you all live. So without further ado, all right. For those who can't read it, I'm not sure how big this will look on your screen. Let's generate a page on the research wiki related to GDPR compliance for US-based companies. And now I'm just going to run it, and we wait. So I'll talk you through a little bit of what the tool is thinking about. In some instances, it's going to take some time to go through and do everything. So one of my default instructions to every one of my AI tools is to retrieve the memory object. The memory object is a database that I set up for universal retrieval from any of my AI tools. So regardless of the AI tool that I'm using, it has the same context. So if I've given ChatGPT, for example, a set of instructions that I want it to follow when it's doing a particular thing, that will also be reflected in Claude, which is what I'm using here. Down here, the skills, that's a new thing I've been leaning on a little bit more with Claude. I haven't seen that in ChatGPT. They do have the GPT, the custom GPTs that you can make, but that's a little bit less malleable. With the skills, you're basically giving the AI a set of instructions to follow in particular contexts. So in this one, it's the research wiki skill. Another default thing I've given to Claude is that for every task that it's supposed to complete, it needs to create a checklist as an artifact. If you don't know, an artifact is a file that Claude will generate for you that you can click on and you can look at. So here it is. It creates a to-do list and it has an updated progress thing. So that's like a default thing that I tell the AI to do for every task. The reason for this is because if it's a really complicated task, it's going to be going through a lot of different context cues, and that can actually morph the content that's coming out. So by having this task list available and constantly updated, it's harder for the AI to lose the thread because it's referring back to that task. All right. See, it's searching to see if there's already stuff on the wiki. There is not. It's looking for my practice materials from my drive. I also have this other side database that I'm working on. It's a knowledge graph of legal information. That's something I'm tinkering with. And so every time I do a legal type request, it always turns to this database. And once it finds a solid answer, it actually updates it to the database as well for future reference. That is like almost an alpha, right? Like it's basically just something that I'm tinkering with because I think things can be done better in legal tech, and I suspect that a knowledge graph might be a good key to solving some of the problems I see. See, it's updating the tracker, so it's going back and it's reviewing that tracker and then updating it. So it's basically recentering its context. Now it's doing some legal research on the web, which again, I've instructed it via my skill on what kinds of sources I want. So it's probably pulling just good information, more or less. Yeah, so these ones in particular are mostly vetted sources, not entirely, but mostly. These are it running a field. So there's a process to the skill that I've given it where it starts off with reliable sources and then it can expand to a general web search after it's gone through reliable sources. Now it's creating the wiki content. It says it was successful. It's writing it to that knowledge graph database. If you're curious what a knowledge graph is, basically, instead of a database, a traditional database where it's a table, kind of like a spreadsheet, where there's rows and columns and there's types of information in each of the rows and columns, a knowledge graph is instead like a series of those tables where pieces of information are pointing all over the place. So you can almost think of it as like a three-dimensional set of tables. There are ways to sort of accomplish similar things with regular databases, except you can actually attach information to the pointer. So you might explain in the pointer why one piece of information is pointing at another, and that adds a little bit more context to the legal information that's being retrieved. And that's why I'm tinkering with the knowledge graph. All right, let's see. These pages tend to be broken. So let's, instead of clicking directly on this, let's go over here. So here we are, new changes. Let's click on this. Here we go. All right. Let's see if the links are correct. So we'll look at this content generally, which I think looks to be structured well. So there's a nice table of contents here that's been generated here on the left. There's practical guidance, legal framework, historical developments, enforcement actions, critical reception and debate, and current developments, pending changes. So that's, again, something in the skill. I've told it how I want the information to be presented. I want like a practical workflow that I can rely on. I want access to the actual law and perhaps any precedent that has been set that refines the law. I want to understand the context of the law, and then I want to see how it's actually playing out in the real world. And so this is basically like Wikipedia meets practical law, or whatever Lexis calls theirs, practical guidance, right? Like something that I can turn to as an attorney as a refresher and see some of the latest updates, see if anything's been changed, and click through to the information that I need. So let's see. A U.S. company is subject to GDPR if it meets any of the following criteria under Article 3. 3.1, company has any establishment in the EU. Company offers goods or services to individuals in the EU. Company monitors behavior of individuals in the EU. So let's see. 3.1, 3.2a, 3.2b. Let's see. 3.1, 3.2a, 3.2b. That looks correct. So let's go back. Compliance checklist. Data mapping, establish lawful basis, update your privacy policy, ensure there's a cookie consent mechanism, establish a process for data subject rights. That's pretty good as well. I would like to see a little bit more in something like this, like, okay, well, how do you establish those procedures? That might be further down. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see like an actual process on doing that. However, it is a good start. And so one of the benefits of it being a wiki is that obviously I can go in as I've done my work and actually add a change to it, whether that's with the assistance of AI or manually. And at this point, we have a couple of hundred pages that are improving in quality over time. So basically, this is just like the next step up in the quality. If you're an attorney and you want access to this platform, you can reach out to me. Let's use tech@promise.legal just to keep everything in a nice bucket for me to review. If you're not an attorney, unfortunately, I will not be opening this up to you. Maybe one day, if this becomes a robust enough resource, it'll just be fully open to anyone who wants to. But I'm too worried about web vandalism and other issues to open up to non-attorneys at this point in time. But I do appreciate your interest, and I'll see you at the next update.